this this session. We'll record this session in case some of you want to have it for later, and also for the other people that didn't come this evening, they want to have it afterwards. So if you don't want to have a recording when you are speaking, you can let me know and I can just pause it. Yeah? So that we also care for the integrity. And it's going to be available for a week after this. So it's not going to linger online for a long time. So you know. So, okay, so let's look into the topic of the inner critic, or the self-criticizing voice, as we will begin there today. So I'm thinking also, or sitting with, because I have done this webinar before several times, and it is a topic that most people are deeply familiar with in some way, right? So it could also be really interesting to hear you a little bit. I mean, if you want to write just a sentence or some words about what you are interested in this topic and what brought you here. So you can write it on the chat, because that will also guide me as I'm speaking with you, to get to know you a little bit and what you are interested in. What brings you to this webinar tonight? What are you curious about? So not a long story, but rather more like a short, to the point, if possible. Okay, so I will just read out here so that we will be in the same space together. So, finding out my negative belief that is stopping me to attract a nice partner. Okay. To understand myself better and to relax into self-love. See the inner critic and embrace it. I would like to stop pressuring myself and be content with me as I am. Right. And Anamita writes again, and then Claudia. I want to become closer to my critic, become buddy with it, and understand its true needs. Okay, cool. So basically, understanding and embracing is what I'm hearing here, and then also taking some steps in life, attracting a nice partner. Yeah, it's of course. So it's a little. I mean, the inner critic is going to be here with us tonight, right? So we're going to have him or her as a companion. So when we share tonight, we will also be aware that it's going to be next door to what we are saying, right? So Lamita says you're a little shy to write, so I understand that. So we're just going to let also the shyness be here, include that. So let's speak a little bit about what is the critic about, really. And I've been deeply inspired by this body of work called the voice dialogue. Voice dialogue comes from two psychotherapists in the US, created a beautiful school or method working with different sub-personalities, we can call them. And this has been, for me, very helpful when we're dealing with the critical aspects of ourselves. If we can see it in a way from a little distance as one part of me, but it's not all of me. So as I see it, also the work that we have, that we can do in regards to this aspect is, first of all, we need to know what it is. We need to identify what's actually going on here. And in that process, like understand more about it, and then also creating a gap between me and this aspect. So there is not, like, it's not up in my face, it's not running my life, because that's normally the tendency when we are at the claws of the critical voice. It's like we're acting as if that is the whole truth. Whereas, like, step by step, creating more and more awareness around it, more and more like a gap. And in that gap, and that there's more and more awareness, where also more choices can come in. So as I see it, it's like understanding is the first, understanding and identifying what it actually is and how it operates inside of me. And then start to disidentify. And then also finding and connecting with that vulnerability that is behind it. So it's like those are the, for me, how I see it, the 3 different steps in a way. But then looking at the critic, what I find quite interesting is how do we start to develop this voice? So as I'm learning now in my psychology studies, how we start to think, how we begin the thought process, and how we begin to think like our own thoughts and our own, something called inner speech. So that's like when we are around 2, we're starting to talk to ourselves, like in third person. We're like starting to talk about, like, as speaking as a way to help me navigate the world. Like, Kavina's gonna put on her shoes, or me do it myself, or whatever. It's like that kind of language. And then eventually, by the age of like 3, 4, 5, 6, we start to take this speech internally. We start to speak to ourselves silently. And this way of speaking is deeply influenced by our environment. So how our environment is speaking to us is gonna have a big impact on how we speak to ourselves. And how well our environment is attuned to us and to our own needs, how well connected, how much sensitivity is also going to influence how I'm thinking about myself and this inner speech. If it's going to be more violent or aggressive, or if it's going to be gentle and kind. So that's like on one level. So that's one way to see it. So as we are then integrating and internalizing that the outer voices from our environment, and most obviously our caregivers in the beginning of our lives, but also later on the peers and teachers and stuff that are deeply influencing the inner language that we are telling ourselves. So it can be good to know that some of this language that we are using towards ourselves is, first of all, it's not our own. It comes from someone else. And secondly, also, it's interpretations from very young age, sometimes as young as like 2, 3, 4, about ourselves and about the lives around us. So it is sometimes, maybe we can recognize that sometimes it is a child's voice, or there's a child, like a childish response to this voice. And another aspect that we can look at in regard to this criticism that we have is also that it comes from survival. It comes from how we are meant to survive in the world. So we are using this inner speech to navigate the world, and navigate and to make sure our needs are met. And coming back to the voice dialogue approach, what they do there, which I find is very helpful, is that they talk about it as something called protector-controller mechanism. So it's a protector and controller aspect of us that is taking charge, basically, about our survival. And this protector controller is making sure that we are protected at all times, and that this little one inside of us is going to be protected at all times. Because this is, as we probably all know, we have been, as children and as babies, we are extremely vulnerable to any kind of threat as we are growing up. And we have as humans, we have a very long, many years of development before we can become autonomous and that we can live on our own. So we're very, very deeply dependent for a long time. So taking care of our survival in relation to our pack, in relation to other people, in relation to our caregivers is going to be essential. So protecting and controlling myself, my behavior, so that I will stay safe and survive inside my little pack. And this protector controller has some friends, has some buddies, or we can call it a family of its own in this approach. And one aspect of it is the pusher aspect. The pusher who is continuously driving us to move on, get going, do, achieve, do more. Just a little bit more, push myself a little bit more. In whatever way is for me. I think all of us have pushers, and then some of us have more or less dominant pushers, and they are also operating in different areas of our lives. I, for example, have had a big spiritual pusher. I've been really pushing myself spiritually to achieve some kind of spiritual development or personal development. So, and then also we have this perfectionist, which is another part of our little family. So the perfectionist who's constantly looking to be perfect, or looking to be perfect in the environment that is of where I feel like I'm fitting in, or I should fit in, the important environment. So, and this is constantly looking for, am I in accordance to this environment that I need to belong to and be safe within? There's another aspect that they call the rule maker. And the rule maker is also connected to the collective and cultural rules and social norms. So continuously looking at, like, how should I behave in this context? What is appropriate in this context? Within my family, within my school, within my work zone, within the groups that I'm moving within or through. And this also changes throughout life, depending on which doors I'm opening, yeah, because I'm always moving through life and finding new ways, different places to engage with. And then, of course, we have the inner critic. And the inner critic is basically the one whose job is to make sure that I don't step outside of any of these boxes, of the pusher, of the rule maker, of the perfectionist. So, and if I do, then I'm going to hear about it. I'm going to hear about it, and I'm going to be punished in some way. I'm going to be, well, punished maybe is not the right word, because it might not, from the inner critic perspective, that might not be the case, but the inner critic is definitely wanting me to stay safe and can be very loud when I'm outside of these formats. So usually what I find also with the inner critic is that when I'm outside of my comfort zone, which is basically all of these boxes, all of these aspects that I've talked about, when I'm outside of my comfort zone, this is when the inner critic is going to become activated, because I have moved away from what's safe. And I usually when I remember, like in the beginning when I was offering workshops, I was deeply in at the effect of the inner critic, because it was like I was so much out of my comfort zone, and I was like having big, long inner critic attacks after having had a workshop. I was like hearing a lecture about everything I did wrong and everything I should have done differently. And of course, I was way out of my comfort zone, and it wanted me to come back to safety. But it was a bit violent, so it didn't really create a lot of safety. It created more stress and anxiety and low self-esteem. And this is basically what it does. When we don't understand where it's coming from, and when we are thinking that this is true, everything it talks about, then the positive intention of the inner critic is not actualized. Then we're basically just battered and bruised and in pain and want to curl up under a blanket and hide. So it's also good to know from this perspective, like what is my area when my inner critic usually surfaces? Like, are there particular areas when it does surface more than others? What are those areas? And I was thinking we could have some sharing about this, because it's usually helpful to look into the personal situation around the inner critic. So let's see, we are uneven, or you are uneven, so maybe I will join them. So let's do an exercise on this, exploring our own inner critic. Are you up for that? Yeah? Let's see what happens here.
Ja, gärna.
Okay. Okay. So are you going to be on the two screens, or are you are now on the unplugged, right? You're not on the Lamita.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I tror det.
Okay, because then could you take that away, because it will help me when I divide into the breakout rooms.
Okej, vad är det jag ska ta bort?
Den som du inte använder, den, om du stänger av från, om det är din dator du har det på, eller vad det, som du inte använder.
Okej. Ska jag skriva unplugged istället? Jag förstod inte. Jag kanske kan jag säga.
But she has one audio on one screen. And
Yeah,
no video.
now it's perfect. Thank you, Lamita. Okay, so then the question then is they're gonna be actually 3 different questions in one go. Yeah, you're gonna explore with the same person with 3 different questions. And maybe Lamita, you can be with me. We can do it together. Lamita. Okay. So the first question is, when is your inner critic active? Is the first question. I will also write it in the chat. When is your inner critic active? In what situations? And as I shared, for example, with my, sorry, there's a bit of a technical things going on here. Okay, Lamita, are you with us? I don't hear you.
Nu hör du mig?
Ja, det hör jag.
Ja. Vad heter, jag tror inte att jag vågar stänga av för att antingen är det ena eller det andra. Går det bra att göra så här? Ja.
Ja, men stanna kvar i mitt rum så gör du och jag övningen tillsammans.
Ja. Okej.
Okay, so the first question, when is your inner critic active? In which situations? Like for me, for example, when I step out of my comfort zone, holding workshops, or another aspect of my life, for example, I have had also a lot of body shame. So body shame has been one aspect of my inner critic, telling me lots of things about my body. In what kind of situations, in what kind of areas. And this, of course, if you don't know each other and you find it like, oh, will I share this? You share as much as you want. Yeah. So, but it's for you to share, for your own, basically for you to explore. So exploring so that you find something that's important for you. Yeah. And then choose how much you want to share with your partner. And then what is the second question? What is its favorite statements? Because it usually comes with some words. It's like, you're always so boring, or why can't you ever do it right, or you're too fat, or you're too ugly, or you're not funny enough, or whatever. What is it usually saying? And then the third question, which is also interesting, is in what areas of your life is it not present? Because that's also happening. It's not there all the time. In some areas, it might be completely quiet and silent, and you're just loving yourself. Or it's a neutral, there's a silence, is not even a question if you're good or bad or anything. It's just, you just are. So I will write the questions here. Okay, so you will have 5 minutes each on each question, and I will let you know in in the little rooms, I will send you messages when you are changing over. So you don't have to think about the time, but pay a little attention to my notes when they pop up in your window. And yeah, so you will do one question, number one, first one person, and then the second person, and then you will change to the second question and both do that one, and then change over to the third. So are there any questions on this exercise? Okay. Great. I will then see how I can do the breakout rooms. Okay, now we'll open the rooms and then you can just say yes to them. And then when I call you back, you just come back. So, and I will be in the room also if you need anything, just let me know.
Tjena!
Tjena! Dyker du upp här?
Vad sa du? Ja.
Du dyker upp, vad
Ja.
roligt.
Men
Ja.
det var jättekul.
Ja.
Vad heter Helena? Sa att hon skulle på det här kvällen och jag såg att du hade det här för någon vecka sedan och så tänkte jag, gud det där vill jag vara med. Och så var det en som avbokade sig precis och tänkte, men gud vad bra.
Vad kul.
Jag fick leka med dig.
Ja,
Ja, jättekul.
jag ser din kalufs bara.
Ja, jag vet inte vad jag ska göra. Det är någonting krångligt med den här.
Ja,
Det spelar ingen roll hur jag vrider på den här. Det är,
skitsamma.
ja, skitsamma. Så
Skitsamma.
att vi dyker in här. Jag vill bara säga att du är så jävla cool.
Ja, cool.
Ja, du är så jävla cool. Det är så här fröken cool liksom. Det är liksom så här, henne känner jag liksom. Okej.
Vänta, okej, jag ska bara...
Ja.
Okej, så vill du börja eller?
Ja.
Mm.
Om du börjar fråga eller är det så du menar?
Precis.
Ja.
Så
Jag har ingen koll alls här så du bara frågar så får vi se vad som händer.
Ja, men precis, det är bra.
Ja.
Jag startar.
Ja.
Så när är din inre kritiker aktiv?
Jag är inte riktigt säker, Camina, faktiskt. Det är... Jag tror att det är kopplat till att det är så tidigt att jag nästan inte har ord. Som att jag bara provar det här, Camina, för det är liksom helt nytt för mig att utforska på den här nivån. Att jag nästan som att jag känner någonting med existensberättigande / vänta.
Yeah, I felt very. It was very positive experience, the sharing, and I felt very tired and kind of almost leaving in the beginning. And I had like resistance. I said, "Oh, it's too long, and I don't want to share." And then when we went to the sharing, it helped me to connect, even if it was uncomfortable in the beginning. But then it kind of became this I don't know, this presence and slowness, which feels comfortable rather uncomfortable. So I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I finally slow down, not just pretending I'm slow. I don't know how to say it. But yeah, I really felt it in my body. And that was one thing. And second thing was kind of realization during the sharing I had that actually the critic is there. Doesn't really, it of course depends in what situations, but when I am not enjoying something or when I am not in the flow, it's there all the time. Whatever critic is, they are different. But once I'm doing something which I enjoy, or I'm focused, or I'm in the flow and or having higher vibrations, then it's gone. So it's I didn't think about it like this, but it's interesting. It's true. It's like it disappears.
Hmm. So it's there sometimes or somehow when you are not enjoying yourself, when it seems like when you are, is it when you're out of touch with your needs and what you're actually needing in that moment?
Yeah, it's more with mind actually. If I'm in my mind, then I am criticizing. But when I am in the flow with more in my body, when I'm doing yoga and when I'm meditate or not meditation is a little bit difficult in the beginning, but when I'm, for example, singing mantras, or when I'm more in the not in the thinking, then it's gone. So it's whatever I'm doing actually actively with my body and connecting to my body, then the critic disappears.
Hmm. Well, that's interesting. So you know then that when you're more in the mental faculties, when you're more thinking, it's there much more than when you're in touch with your body and doing physical things.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, and that sort of makes sense as well, because it is an inner voice, right? It's like it's part of the mental pattern somehow.
Mm.
So it's activated when we are thinking. That's why it's also it's more easy to be in this sort of evaluating mindset when we are thinking. We are continuously evaluating things, right? Like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this right? Is this wrong? It's like there's a scale somehow that we very easily go into.
Mm.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And then also there was something about the exercise that also helped you both become more awake but also more relaxed.
Yeah, not like awake, but more to be comfortable with the slowness. Yeah, exactly. Be more present.
Mm. Thank you. And someone else?
I would like to share. So I'm writing here, and it was quite interesting that my what I discovered is that my critic is there where I'm not home or present or grounded. Then it's like very much more activated and alive, and that is when I'm also like most affected by it. And I realized on the last question when we got that in what area are your life, in what area in your life is not there, and it's when I feel trust, connection, and presence, it's not around, and that was very interesting because it's like when I feel trust in me, when I feel grounded, rooted, and like home, it's more of some obstacle that's flying outside me that I'm like, it's not even touches me. But when I'm not home, it's like trying to stick in my system, and it's trying to like infect my whole being. So it's like super interesting how such a big difference it is of where I am and how affected I am by the critic, and how empowered I am when and not touched by it when I feel trust, and also trust in teams or with others. Like I feel connection and trust, then the critic is not even there when it involves other people also, because it could be when I'm not present and I am speaking with someone, the critic can easily come up because I don't feel so secured, or I don't feel I feel nervous, and that easily makes the critic like coming and speaking into me. So yeah, it was very interesting to discover that. So thank you. It was really sweet.
Mm. So it became very clear for you then that when it's there and when it's not there. And when I'm coming back to what you wrote in the beginning about understanding its true needs, the inner critic, I'm thinking also there's something when you are present and connected and grounded, that is not there. But when you are more affected by the inner critic, what do you think are the needs then?
So my needs there is it is actually to I wrote it here. So it's to be seen. You know, it's just to be seen, honored, because it's like obviously it is kind of like a something screaming at you, and instead of reacting to it, it's acting to it. So just being like, okay, so it's like I said, like it's just here around and I see it, instead of being like reacting and pushing it away or judging it or judging myself for it. It's more being honoring that yeah, you have maybe something to say, but it doesn't need to be feeded. It doesn't need to be true. But just like honoring it, and that it might have something to say, but it doesn't need to be true. It doesn't need to affect you. So instead of pushing it away, judging it, and even make it as your enemy, because critic, it doesn't sound like your body. So I'm like, so how can I be body with it by just like, okay, this is what it says. This is what runs in this critic's system. Okay, it's all right. So I will see, like, just see it and honor it, but not feed it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing what goes on there for you, like seeing that you're under attack or it comes up, and
Yeah.
and also to not buy into it. This is what I'm hearing. To not buy into it so much, not believing it, but rather it's like, okay, I hear you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like for me, it is kind of a friend that's very negative. So it's like, don't let this friend like affect you. Just sit with it and be like, okay, this is what you have to say now. And yeah, I would say it's just like witnessing it.
Mm.
But it's hard. It's not an easy game. It's like once you're there, and maybe if I'm very ungrounded, it is hard, but it's also just like important to accept that that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is right now, and not trying to change it, trying to just like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sitting with it and witnessing it. So I'm thinking also about the like of the inner critic as a signal, like what you're saying also there. There's something going on in that moment that is triggering the critic, that it comes out. And here we can also apply a question to ourselves. It's like, okay, what's really going on here for me? Was like, what do I feel? Because the inner critic normally also comes when there is a vulnerable moment, right? If we are not connected and not grounded, we are in a sense a bit shaken, right? Like stirred. So if the inner critic comes up, we can also see it as a signal that there is a need here that is not being met. Even like, so yes, and then we need to learn to deal with the content of the inner critic, like you said, this negative friend, and we like can sit with it and witness it. But if we even take it from before, and check what has happened before the inner critic started. What am I feeling then? In this situation, what am I feeling, and what are my needs here in this situation? And this is like how we can start to also build this even more closer connection to what's really going on for us, and this vulnerable part in us. It's like it's longing for something, but it doesn't really know how to speak it, and then it speaks in this negative voice instead. It's like it's a warped kind of communication.
I have something to say there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it goes back to trust. He wants trust. So before anything else, it starts to say, I'm seeking trust. I'm seeking connection. I'm seeking presence. And when it's not there, it starts to grow. The critic starts to take more space. But if it would have more of the trust, presence, or connection, I believe it will be met.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, one more from the exercise and then we take a break.
I can share.
Yeah.
I've been working a little bit with the inner critic because there was a time when it was so strong and so loud that it would really take a lot of space. And it seemed that I put a lot of attention into it, and it was creating a lot of noise. So I learned to, I think that for me has been let go. You know, I see that anyway, whatever I do, it's enough, because the stronger voice of my inner critic was like, you need to do more.
So just check there, Sarah. Are you speaking now about the exercise, some insights from the exercise, or more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it said, because one of the questions was, what is the favorite statements? This was not enough. You have not done enough. So if I go back to the exercise, and in which situation and which areas and what it said, so it was not enough. So but it is not so strong anymore. That's what I came into a conclusion about this exercise, that it's not that strong as it was. And I related so much when Claudia said trust, and I see that it was about another type of trust for me than hers. For me, it was trusting in the universe, trust in this big power that surrounds us, trust in life. I think that's when the inner critic really quiets its voice.
Okay, so great. So you were seeing that it has been more active in the past, and now it's not so active. Is it the same voice but just less strong, or is the voice completely gone?
It's less strong, and I have learned to question it.
Yeah, so there is more space around it. Yeah, great. That's also how I experienced it. I was doing the exercise with Lamita, and I also experienced that in those areas where I've worked a lot with the inner critic, it's like the voice is less intense. So it's also good to see that when it happens, it actually gives some credit to the work we have done, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so let's have some minutes. Is 5 minutes okay? Are we good with that? 5 minutes? So that means 8 past 8. 8.8. 8 past. Okay, see you later. Back. So let's also now give some space to this other aspect. Well, we are already inviting self-compassion as we are entering and looking at the inner critic with awareness. This is like just awareness itself, I would say, is compassion. It's the ground in where compassion can happen. Yeah. So yeah, speaking a little bit about that, and speaking about what happens when we develop this awareness, like when we're looking into this area and we realize that this is not the truth of the situation. Yeah, what the inner critic is saying is not the full reality. And here, of course, this is like a process that takes some time, and or like some work, some practice, it's like building new pathways in the brain, even like finding that I don't have to believe these voices. I don't have to follow this guidance that comes from, like in my case, like 45, if I was 3 when it started, like this sort of voice, a 45-year-old voice, that's like it's completely outdated. It's not the reality anymore. But when we are at the effect of the inner critic, it is the reality. It's like God's all-knowing voice. It's like, I am bad, and I do believe that. It's like that's the only thing I believe in that moment, when I'm completely like engulfed in that voice. So it's also good to have some awareness of what is like what's the cycle that happens in that space. It's when the inner critic is active, it also evokes shame in us, right? And shame is something that we don't want to experience normally. Like shame is one of the worst feelings that we can have, because it says something about our inner worth, our self-worth. So we don't want to feel shame, but this is the dance, the inner critic. When the inner critic comes on, then the response from the inside is shame. So it's like we're having an inner perpetrator, an inner like attacker, and then the victim of that attacker is the shame, is the sense of shame. We can also see that, or we could also say that there's like a voice saying you're not good, but the receptor of that message, we can also look at it as a child. It's like there's a child in us that heard this message at some point in our lives. I should not be this, that, and that. I should be more like that. There's something wrong with me. There's like a shame voice, and it's usually a child's voice. And if we can see the child in that space, rather than being like busy with the critical voice, that also is another way to activate compassion. Because if we look at the situation on like an external situation where there is a grown-up attacking a little girl or boy on the street, this is not something like, if we are healthy people, I think we all are in this room, and like we would not see that that's like an okay thing to do. There's not okay to attack a child, right? And that is the same thing that happens inside of us. There is an attack towards a child inside of us in that moment. And this happens on the inside. So in this moment, when this attack goes on, the child sort of curls into a ball or whatever happens. goes into a shame bubble. There's some clients that I work with, they're experiencing toxic shame even. It goes to the next level where their whole existence is about, this is completely, everything is wrong with them. There's an intense level of shame that they are living in all the time. So it's like, this is a message to us that the child is under attack inside of us. And whenever a child is under attack, at least this is my perspective, we need to stand up for this child. We need to find a way to say, this is not okay. And we can do that in whatever way we want. We can be versatile with our choices here. We can sort of gently take the child and move away from the attacker. We can talk to the attacker and engage with it. Ask about what does it want? What does it need? But there's some kind of intervention that's needed here to not let that go on and on, because that usually leads to more like a spiraling loop. So as I've seen it, this picture of the child has been very helpful for me anyway, that when I notice the attack, okay, now I have an inner critic attack, then it's time for me to wake up as my inner parent and say, okay, what do I need to do to save the kid inside? Because the kid needs some support here. Because the kid is too small at this point to defend itself, or to stand up for itself, or have like a protecting layer. So then I need to be that space for it. This is what works for me. This is how I think about it. So how I think about it is like growing as a human. It means also growing my capacities for inner parenthood. It's like relating to those small vulnerable parts of me as a parent, and learning skills to take care of that child inside. And one way to do that is also to sense the vulnerability of the child. It's like, okay, my dear, what's going on for you? What's happening? How do you feel? What do you need right now? And to like actively listen and to actively give it what it needs. And maybe it's like if I'm afraid, maybe I need to actually physically hold myself in that moment. Like, okay, there's a calming myself, for example. Or maybe there are other ways there are other ways to deal also with the attack in that moment. It's like, sometimes I need to be quite harsh and say, back the fuck off to the inner critic. It's like, you're not welcome here. This is not the party where you're allowed in this moment, because the kid is too afraid. You need to back off. Or it can be like having some humor with it, playing with it. Me and Lamita, we are old friends from a very long time ago, and we actually worked together on a project with the Inner Critic, and we made a video where I was dressing up as the Inner Critic, and we made a video about it. And it was like I totally dressed up as my own inner critic. It's like painted a mustache and had a hat and like had fun with it. And that's also helpful. Like, okay, how does your inner critic look? How can we have humor about it? Because it is like an outdated, old-fashioned kind of aspect of us. that's just a little inspiration for your further exploration if you want. Dress up as your inner critic and have a party with it. Yeah. But also, so let's explore a little bit about what is compassion for you in that moment. And I was also thinking, if we want, we can also have a moment here now. Either we go in for another exercise regarding and exploring self-compassion, or we can also have an open space here to explore. And I have a coaching with one of you, or maybe two, if we can have that time. To shorter coachings on this topic. So does anyone feel like they want to jump in and get some support? Then we can have a little coaching. Otherwise, we do an exercise.
And the coaching has to be on video.
Well, I can switch it off.
Then I can try.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we have a little bit more time. We can have a little bit open space to share any insights regarding anything that has been shared tonight around self-compassion, the inner critic, anything that you have seen or experienced, want to ask about.
May I ask something?
Yes.
I thought it was a very beautiful shift, if I can mention you, Katka. Is it okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It was such a beautiful shift. Where was it when there was a point when you shifted to acceptance? Do you remember where it was? It was very beautiful.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I know that there was this feeling about this, where is the contraction? So I was feeling the contraction in the throat, and then Karina asked me, is it okay to be with it now?
Yeah.
And then I thought, actually, yeah, it's okay. so
Yes.
it was the fight stopped, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was so curious. It was like, I thought it was something like that, but I just wanted to clarify for myself. It was very beautiful. Thank you very much, Katka.
Thank you.
And Kamina. Mm.
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 Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. I like the emphasis now on the fighting, when the fighting stops. For me, that's one of the main key moments, sort of, when that happens, when that shift happens, then the drop inward, and there's a possibility for compassion. There's a possibility for peace. There's a possibility for presence and relaxation. And it's like to find that moment when, like, seeing where I fight and then I stop. That's like, I also find that very beautiful every time that happens.
I just want to say it was this feeling of it's still there, but it's okay. That was like, because you asked this question, is it okay? And I never thought, is it okay? Of course, it's not okay to be with it, but then I tried and it was okay. So that was the yes.
Yeah, because the inner critic also feeds from the fight. It feeds on the fighting. So it's like, when we stop the fighting, like, the inner critic doesn't have so much fuel. And it's sort of, okay, you mean I should just be with this? Becomes really like, what do you mean? What can I do then? And it's sort of, comes to a halt a little bit, or a pause anyway. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to share something or express something? explore.
I want to share one thing that came to me again. So I see this, it's when we're talking about it, it makes me realize that I will see it like a drama triangle. And how I see it is funny because I see that the adult, parent, and higher self as one. And then one day is like the attacker, critic, and the drama that it seeks drama. And the third, like the child, victim, and it feeds the vulnerability there. So it's like so that's how I see the drama triangle, but in this aspect. And I find it very interesting because when we are like stepping into our higher self as the adult in the situations, to listen to, like, not listen to the critic, but to listen to the inner child and protect it from the critic. I see that we are, that's why we're stepping up as parent and as the adult in the situations. And I get a little bit confused because when you asked me about the need, it made me realize, like, is it the need of, so I think maybe I confuse the need of the critic with the child.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious about that because I see that I said that what I believe the critic needs is to feel trust and to feel connection and presence, which is the child. It's not the critic. And so I'm curious about, because the critic I see is the one that wants to attack, is dramatic. It's obviously, it's hard to calm down in a way because it starts somewhere from the child. Well, how would you describe it? Or can you give me a perspective here?
Mm-hmm. So I actually love that distinction between what are the needs of the critic and the needs of the child. And normally, I find it a little bit difficult to give general, like a general thing. It's like it's easier to work with it, right? It's like, and how I would work with it is like I would ask you to position yourself on two different cushions, for example. Whereas on one cushion, you would be like the inner critic. And we would talk to the inner critic and ask the inner critic what, like, we would listen to it. Okay, what is it saying? What is it? What is the message? What is the intention behind the harshness? Because there's something in that harshness and that sort of intensity that is really, really important. It's like it's a sign that something is uncomfortable, right? So we would look at it and listen to the inner critic and see, okay, what's the message behind the judgment? And then we would shift you, and then you could shift over to the other cushion, and we would then talk to the child, right? The child that's like, well, under attack and feels this shame and guilt, and I should be better, but I'm not, and you know, the also the victim part of us, because this is what it is. Yeah. But it's also the vulnerability. And actually, when we go deep enough in both of these two, we can come to the same place. We want the same thing. But it usually comes out very differently, as you say in the drama triangle. It's like it's very positioned. You know, there's one attacker and there's one victim on the inside. But when we look deeper, there's a similar kind of need, and that could be different in different situations, but it normally is something to do with like being able to be who I am, being safe, feeling trust, like you were you were exploring. So that I would guess it's something like that, but we would need to explore a little bit and see what it is. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, it does, because it is like you say, you need to like. But I got a little bit confused there, so it's like that's why I'm like, because this is the need of the child, but maybe that is exactly what it links together. If that's the need, that is obviously, how can I say, mirroring to the attacker critic, because it starts somewhere. It starts from the emotions, right? It starts from the child's need that's not being met.
Yeah, exactly. I would say that it starts like, I mean, for example, if the inner critic has started on you, if it starts to attack, then we need to move a little bit before in time. It's like, okay, seeing the record, if we look at a recording, you know, of that scenario, so that has happened, and then we move a little bit in front and see what happened there. What are you actually feeling there? And that's usually a child feeling something, and then the inner critic wants to protect that child and tells it you should do this and that, and then you will be safe. So then if we want to move like backwards then in time, and we can ask the child, okay, what do you feel? What are your needs here? If we don't go to the solution of the inner critic, but rather ask about the feelings and needs. And then it doesn't matter so much what is what, even though we can be curious and we can have fun with it, but it's also like, this is how I see it. This is where the work is, really.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just want to finish up that what I see is that the critic is the shadow. I wrote it in the beginning of my notes, is a shadow parent to the child, which the other one is actually the real higher parent, which is the adult. So I see the critic wants to be parenting the victim, but in a harsh way.
Right.
That's what it does. That's this strategies. Thank you, Karina.
Cool. I love that you brought out the drama triangle, because that was part of my menu for today. I wanted also to bring it out as a drama triangle. And I have it a little differently than you, but it doesn't matter, because, you know, we are all being creative with how we see it. So, but I really also see it as a drama triangle like that. And also, well, I'm not going to go into it, we're going to end. But it's like, it's a lot of fun. We can play with it also, even though it's like difficult at times, we can also play with this part. Yeah. Okay, so we are approaching our end here. So can we perhaps, maybe we take a minute just in silence to sense ourselves after this evening together. So for a moment, you can look, you can close your eyes, doesn't matter. Just sense yourself as you're sitting here. And maybe taking some breaths. Feeling your body and your felt sense in the body. The physicality of your body. And also sense how you are touched, or what you bring with you from today. If there's perhaps there's a quality, a feeling, or a sense inside you, or perhaps it's more of an insight or a thought or something that was important for you to understand. And before we end, we can share that also. We can share it on the, and maybe we can just say, we are not that many people. We'll just say a few words each. We don't have a lot of time, so this is like 1 or 2 or 3 words. What do you bring with you from today, if you bring with you something? So you can unmute.
I can start.
Mm.
I would like to acknowledge the magic of exploration and acceptance.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I can yeah, for me the acceptance is very strong, also resonate with me, the acceptance and the opposite of nervosity, the calmness, the not running away or numbing it, but accepting. But I feel that I knew acceptance, but acceptance kind of have different quality. This compassion acceptance, like very soft, not pushing, oh, I will accept it, but very soft one.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. If you don't want to say, you can also write in the chat.
I bring with me the insights of that I need trust, connection, and presence to not be so affected by my critic. That was actually a really important thing I will really bring with me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I bring with me trust. That was the most important thing for me this afternoon. So thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to share, Helena?
Yes. I will bring with me an open heart to both the inner critic and, of course, to the child within. Thank you very much, Karina.
Beautiful. So thank you so much for today and this evening. And I wish you lots of self-compassion and acceptance, soft acceptance, slow acceptance, and trust and groundedness, yumminess. And there will be a few more webinars coming up. Next week will be one, and it's all in the mail you already got. And there's also a Zen coaching training, module 1 coming up in November in Stockholm. So everything is on the web for those of you who are interested. Otherwise, if we don't see each other, much blessings. If we see each other again, I'm happy. So good to see you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kavina. Take care. Much love.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.